Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo.
I'm Robert Grace. This is Adam Diaz,
Hello.
and it is almost 1 o'clock, and
'Tis 1 a.m. and we
Adam's
have house
mom
guests.
and
Yes.
everyone's sleeping. So we're gonna try and keep it quiet. No big woos.
Yeah, no one in the audience make loud noises. We might hear you.
Yeah.
I think, what we've kind of realized for the last few weeks as we've been like diving into more and more in-depth topics is that with your schedule being Monday to Thursday, and you having Friday off, we can record on Thursday nights a bit easier because it's late,
Yeah.
and you can sleep in. You don't have to be up at 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. So we're probably just going to start releasing on Fridays. I know that we've slowly shifted from Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, and now Thursday to Friday. So I think
Maybe we'll make it all the way around.
I was going to say, yeah, we either are going to stick with Fridays moving forward because it makes more sense with Robin's new schedule, new in quotation marks. She's had it for over a year. And it's going to be your schedule for the foreseeable future. Or we'll just loop back around until we get back to Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what happens with that. But before we get into our topics, I want to go ahead and say this is the last week, the last episode to share the topic for the Scaryish is what I was calling it, but like the July sweepstakes, the way that you can grant yourself an entry each week, and this being the last week, this is the last time you can do it, is go on to Facebook, which is facebook.com/scarishpodcast, Twitter, which is at scarishpod, or Instagram, which is at scarishpodcast. Find the most recent episode, so episode 270, whatever post we've put up there, and share it to your timeline, share it to your story, or retweet it, and then at us saying, oh, I reshared this, or whatever the case may be. For each social media that you share the post on, you get an entry. So you can get up to 3 entries that way, and then you can get 1 bonus entry each week by sharing an older episode. Go to Spotify, copy that link, go over to your social media, probably Twitter is the best way to do it, share it on your Twitter, and then at us saying I really like this episode and why. And so you can get 4 per week. Thank you to everyone who has done it so far. It's been fantastic. It's so nice to see so many folks out there sharing the show with your followers and your friends and your family so we can hopefully find new listeners. And if you do that, at the end, we're probably going to give it until 4th of July, 5th of July to collect all the entries and then figure out who wins the grand prize. And the grand prize has multiple things that you can win. I'm going to turn it over to Robin to go over those things.
So for the grand prize, it's going to be a custom Scaryish mug that you'll let us know what your username or whatever nickname you'd like to have put on there, and a collection of our acrylic charms, our cryptid acrylic charms that we have, and a set of Scaryish pins.
And in addition to 1 custom set of RPG dice that I have made for you, and I will ask you what color schemes that you want. I will make those, handcraft them, and send them your way. And that is the totality of the grand prize. And then there will be 3 consolation prizes, which will be a mug that Robin is designing a logo for. It's going to be a new Scary-ish logo, correct? Mm-hmm. And we're going to send 3 of those out to 3 consolation prize folks. So 4 people will be considered winners when this thing is said and done. And this is the last episode for it, so don't forget to go check our social media so that you can share it and get your entries. So pretty excited. It's been really cool to see how this is all shaken out.
And then the consolation prizes. Oh, did you go over those?
I literally just went over all those.
Sorry. My brain's not working.
Yep, you were staring at me the whole time when I was talking about them, too. You actually answered a question during that when I asked about the custom design that you're still designing. So it's going to be a good time, and we'll announce those probably on the next episode. So our next week, though, the 4th of July week, is going to be fucking crazy, y'all. We have a lot going on.
So, yeah, AX is this weekend. Anime Expo, it's this weekend. We're
at the LA Convention Center.
We and our friends over at the JJ Obsession, our co-studio of artsy engineers, we're going to be at Anime Expo. We're going to have a booth F4 in the Artist Alley if you guys are going.
My favorite kind of tornado.
F4 is actually the name of the group of boys from Hanayori Dango. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
Of course.
Boys Over Flowers. And I was just yes, it is perfect. But yeah, so we'll be there if you guys would like to come and check out our wares. I know our friend Jess, she's making a whole bunch of these adorable frogs. You guys have to get your hands on them. They're so stinking squishy and cute, and I love them. And I'm going to have all our new merch. So yeah. Very
excited. It's going to be a fun time. Starts July 1st, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
3rd and 4th, yeah.
So we'll be working on 4th of July. So it should be a fun time. And so we're going to be pretty wiped out. That is to say that I intend on having an episode next week. It's almost certainly going to go up on Friday because we'll definitely need that extra day, which is probably just going to be our new day, like I mentioned. And then I think after that, we might discuss taking like a week or two off. I know we said last year we're probably going to try and do
a little bit of a vacation.
like a summer vacation style thing, and maybe we can have some content for you guys.
We're going to try to do, some of the movie podcasts.
Yes. We're very excited. We're going to get that finally up and running. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And then I think what we're going to do for Scaryish's feed, I would like to do one story time reading where we just do like 8 fucking emails. Just bang, 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 bang. And then we can have 2 weeks in a row of of story time. But we'll let you know when that's coming. But just forewarning, it'll probably be in July. So we can take a bit of a break. I would like to take vacation from the show during San Diego Comic-Con because we are going to be attending. And I know it's going to be right smack dab when we should be doing
able
the show.
To record during it. So, yeah.
So having something prepared for that is ideal. But all that said, Robin, what are you covering this week?
So this week, okay. I want to thank all of our patrons who participated in the online poll we had.
That's right.
We had a poll where we put up a bunch of topics that you folks voted on. And so if you guys aren't aware, we have a Patreon, and on Patreon, you can have these different tiers, and one of the tiers from $3 and above, you get to help us choose topics sometimes. And it's been a while since we've posted one of these topic polls.
Couple months at least, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're glad that everybody, started voting and helped us choose these topics. And hopefully you guys like how we ended up doing them.
So we wound up with the top 2.
Yes, so my top voted for choice was a true crime topic, and that is of Kim Tae-Hyun. It's Korean true crime. Hopefully you guys find it interesting. Adam has the Knights Templar. Hopefully you guys find that interesting. He went down a rabbit hole after this segment. So I don't know. I think true crime is one of my favorite things to cover because I am absolutely fascinated by true crime. I think
we got a really nice piece of feedback from a listener who really enjoyed Son of Sam and Sons of Sam and said don't ever stop doing true crime. And it was very nice. I'll talk a little bit about feedback during my topic.
Yeah, I saw a little snippet of yours.
Because Robin always reads my scripts.
But I think crimes when committed are pretty much the same no matter what country you're in. I think it's just how the community handles certain crimes and how the government handles things that differs. And in this particular tale of true crime, it touches on stalking and, of course, murder. So if that's something that triggers you, maybe this particular half of the episode is not for you, and you can kind of skip to Adam's more historical, information heavy segment of the episode. Anyway, I'm going to get into my topic.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm excited for it. I'm so horny for this topic.
So, what the
Sometimes I forget the words for when you're excited for certain things. Like when I get horny for food, it means I'm hungry, but I forgot the word hungry. So.
Okay. So on Thursday, March 25th, 2021, around 10:50 p.m., there were reports that 3 bodies were found in Nowon, Seoul. And these 3 bodies were a mother and her 2 daughters. So that night, authorities and reporters were kind of all in an uproar. There was this crazy thing happening. Everybody was rushing to find out what was going on. Trying to contain an investigation on one end, and then reporters trying to get all of the tea on the other. It was just chaos. Police had arrested a man that they considered a suspect. It was 24-year-old Kim Tae-Hyun, and he was arrested at the home of the victims. He was literally there.
At the crime scene.
Considered a suspect. He was it, The night of March 23rd, their mother had been working and returned home late. The eldest daughter had also been working overtime, so she was also coming home late. The day of the crime, this guy, he arrives at their home at around 5:35 p.m., knowing that the family wouldn't get home till around 10. He knew he would have to encounter all of these people come that time, come 10 o'clock, right?
So he's not there early to like rob them. He's there early to wait
prep.
for them.
Yes.
That's fucked up.
So he disguises himself as a delivery person in order to gain entry into the victim's home. When he gets there around 5, he says he has a package. He's told, hey, leave the package outside. But he waits and he stays hidden in silence until the door opens minutes later. And he forces his way in. He kills the younger sister and then lays in wait for the others to come home. So this apartment was older. It had poor soundproofing, but no one heard the sounds of these 3 getting stabbed in their, apartment. This is a whole apartment complex, and somehow
no one heard this guy force his way in and then kill people.
Yeah. A resident did report later that they had heard a scream, and they did think that it was unusual, but that was it. They didn't report it or anything. And I know a lot of people do that. They hear something weird, and then they're like, I'm not gonna call the cops just because I hear something weird.
Yeah.
I've literally had someone get shot in the apartment above us.
I remember that. That's fucked up.
That was freaking crazy. Someone got shot in the apartment above us, and I was like, well, that was a weird sound. I was at home by myself. It was absolutely horrifying that whole night. But I didn't report it to the police until, police just showed up. So
Didn't you hear the chick yelling too?
I heard, so someone got shot upstairs, and then this, I think 2 people lived upstairs, and one of them ran after them, or somebody living in the complex saw them running out of this apartment and was chasing them with a phone camera, like yelling like, I got you, or I see you, stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I did not leave the apartment. I was like, this is weird. I'm just going to stay in and not, do anything. And police showed up, a little while later, but yeah, so I get how a resident in this apartment complex could totally be like, well, that was weird. I'm not going to call the cops,
You sort of note the time, like if something happens and someone asks me,
anytime
like, did you hear anything weird?
Yeah, anytime there's a loud sound that we don't really know what it could be, or if it sounds like a gunshot or something like that, Adam always goes like, all right, the time is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
time.
I try and note it out loud. Sometimes I text it to myself if it's like really, really weird.
So nothing is reported that night by any of the residents. Tae-Hyun, he remains within their home with the bodies. He eats their food, drinks their alcohol. He goes through the victim's phone, like the conversation history. He deletes conversation history on their phone.
What the fuck?
And blocks their acquaintances on their phone. It wasn't until the 25th when friends of the eldest daughter were concerned by the lack of contact. And so they report this to the authorities, which then leads them to the discovery in the apartment and the discovery of the bodies. They had all been stabbed in the neck. When police find Tae-Hyun in the apartment, he had self-inflicted but non-life-threatening injuries to his neck, arms, and stomach. So
it's almost like he wanted to kill himself, but he wasn't pulling the trigger on it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so I think authorities or the court, something like that, they were like, he stabbed himself, but he knew not to stab himself where it would kill him. Whereas all the 3 victims, he stabbed them where it would kill him.
Do you think his plan was to pretend he was also a victim for some reason?
I think it was something where he had stabbed himself when he heard police coming. So he was like, man, I killed these people. I don't want to go to jail or whatever. And tries, quote unquote, tries to kill himself, but is like, I don't really want to kill myself,
Gotcha.
The next morning, it was just this barrage of reporters on this apartment complex. Residents were all opening their mouths to anyone who would listen, because that's what happens whenever things like this happen, right? People just want their 5 seconds, 15 minutes
of fame.
That's the
just FYI. When the news showed up at our apartment that night, after
our roommate Charlie, she was like badass.
She was just like, "Do you guys want to talk?" And we're just like, "No." And then she went to the door and she opened it, and they were asking her questions. She's like, "Nope, not interested." anyone in here interested? And she like looked over at us.
She was like
nope.
a badass
and
about
she's like,
it.
not interested. And she slammed the door in their face. I was like, fuck.
So all these people were just trying to get some attention. There was a lot of confusing information that was floated around because everyone was saying all this other stuff. There were a lot of unconfirmed statements, just a big old rumor mill going around. No one there really knew them.
Which we went over during Son of Sam and Sons of Sam, like how unreliable witness testimony is.
Yeah.
And it's like when people come out because they want to be on TV, it gets even worse.
Yeah. Some people were saying that it was some jilted ex-boyfriend that came and murdered them. But as more information was found, pieces began to fall into place. More information was released. I mean, they did more investigation into this person that they found, right? And so things start coming out. So certain reporters, they start asking people who were actually close to the victims. And they spent a lot of time with the friends of the eldest daughter. And some of these friends didn't want to speak to the crazy media people, like the frenzied media people just
the
trying.
Tabloid media shit.
But they opened up to these reporters that were like, we're going to represent the victims in a respectful way. It's going to be honorable. We're going to present like the most accurate information possible. So if you want to open up and talk to us and tell us like what really happened, all, the facts. But they were able to get this information from them. And these people were really annoyed that all these articles kept coming out from all these different news outlets that were just riddled with misinformation because they were just releasing the first things they were getting from all of these residents that were reporting all these things. And one of the friends flat out said that it's definitely not concerning the speculation that it was an ex-boyfriend. They were like, it has nothing to do with that. That's not a thing. Like, people are just making shit up. On March 26th, SBS News, which is a huge news channel SBS is just a huge channel in general in Korea. And they reported that the case was a stalking crime. The eldest daughter had actually recently changed her phone number due to stalking. She had apparently been stalked for approximately 3 months. Prior to this happening, she had actually sent messages to her friends informing them of the constant and persistent stalking that she was experiencing and how terrified she was of it. But one of these messages stated, "I turn around every time I go home." But despite this fear, she never asked for help. And I think one of the reports I saw was that it was something where she didn't want to bother other people with it. She didn't want to say oh, I need help because someone's stalking me, blah, 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 blah. She was just like, I'm just going to.
Stalking is scary, dude. Like, it's serious. It's scary. I always encourage people report it to an authority whenever you can. That way there's a record of it because stalking tends to escalate.
Yeah.
Things don't come to a healthy resolution on their own.
Yeah.
It's never a good thing. And that's super sad to hear.
So the eldest sister and Tae-Hyun, they had been acquainted through an online game. So they met through an online game. He began stalking her after she had cut off contact because he was starting to present some strange and obsessive behavior. And so she's like, I'm going to cut off contact. I'm blocking you. Like, this is weird and I don't feel comfortable. So her friends reported that they were feeling a lot of regret that despite knowing that she was being stalked, they never did anything about it. And she never reported anything about it. And I think that is something that runs rampant all over the world, not just Korea, not just America. So many victims, whether they're men or women, they're just too afraid to report these things that are happening to them. And whether that's assault, whether that is stalking. So many people think it's like, oh, it's not worth it to report it. It's fine. No, it's not going to happen again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I remember in high school, I can't believe I haven't thought of this before when we've done episodes on stalking, but one of my acquaintances, I won't say how connected I was to them. I will say they didn't go to the same high school as me. He had a girlfriend. They seemed to be pretty close. They broke up and then she started stalking him. And I remember him telling me that and being like, she's stalking you? I didn't know chicks could stalk dudes because I was young and stupid.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, though, it got to the point where they had to have authorities called because she would stab him with her pen in the hallway, not serious where he was bleeding or anything like that, but he was just who am I going to complain to? She's significantly smaller than me in stature, but she's like doing these things to me that are like kind of scary and violent. And like, she's like following me to my classes and always being creepy. His high school was like multi-leveled high school. And there was one day where he was like talking to a friend. His friend walked away and he started to go down the stairs and he got kicked in the back.
Wow.
And he fell down like a flight of stairs and he had to go to the fucking hospital. And he looked up when he like hit the fucking ground. It was her. She kicked him down the stairs. And after that, like they got people involved, and I'm pretty sure like it got wrapped up after that. But I remember like hearing about it and then hearing like a week later, like he was in the hospital. I was like, holy fuck, like that's crazy.
That is crazy.
It's like this thing, no matter how benign you think it might be, can escalate so very, very quickly because like the obsession that happens with stalking is so like frighteningly unhealthy.
Yeah. And it's horrifying. I have had not necessarily stalking, but super creepy experiences with like exes. I've had an ex literally wait in my apartment in the dark for me to come home from work.
That's so fucking
That
creepy.
day, because he called me, because we had broken up and I was dating somebody else, and he was upset that I was dating that person. And so he's like, I'm going to wait at your apartment or whatever. He was in my apartment in the dark, but I was getting off a shift at work, and I work with a bunch of guys. And so I was like, I don't want to go home by myself. And I brought like 4 big fucking dudes with me home that night. And they're like, you need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I was just horrified. But I was glad that I had friends. And the sad thing is, not a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's true.
Not a lot of people have the people that can go with them places and protect them and make sure they're fine. And I think that's a really fucked up thing in the world in general, that there's got to be a reason that people don't feel comfortable with reporting crimes like this.
Right.
And it's something wrong with society. And I think there needs to be some sort of change, right, that allows people to feel like they can report abuse, that they can report stalking, they can report all these different crimes.
There's so many casual times in life where, and just in my life and in your life too, I've seen, and during this show, like we'll be in live shows and stuff, like people start acting as if you need to, for some reason, engage with your abuser. Like they have a right to have access to you. And it's like people that have told us these stories before. It's always shocking to me where it's just like, I've told stories before about like cutting people off. I've even had someone mention, like, we had someone pop into one of our channels and say something like incredibly crude and like sexual, and like one of our moderators banned them immediately. And someone complained in one of our live shows, like, a single offense? Are you kidding me? And it's like, no, I'm not fucking kidding you. Like, if anyone has a problem with that, feel free to get the fuck out of the channel forever.
I mean, like the girls or the women at MFM say, fuck politeness. Like, you shouldn't have to pretend that things are okay just to be nice to someone.
Like, you don't get 3 strikes, If you act in a certain way that someone finds threatening or is directly threatening, that person has every right to cut you off. They don't have to have, to feel threatened to just say, like, I'm not interested in this person, I don't need to engage with them anymore. Like, you don't get access to people just because you want to. And so hearing stalking cases nowadays, like, creeps me out just a little bit more.
Yeah.
It sincerely does.
We just covered a few months ago the case of those, podcasters that got murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be acknowledged that it is starting to become kind of an epidemic, like in like modern society with how connected everyone is. And it's very difficult to separate yourself from people nowadays. And if you don't feel you're supported, you don't have people backing you up to help you out with that, like it's a very difficult thing to deal with.
It wasn't until October of 2021 that a law was finally passed that went into effect in Korea, okay? It punished the act of stalking.
So
finally.
Until then, stalking was just legal.
Stalking was treated as a misdemeanor.
Okay,
but I'll get into that. So it had become such a big problem in Korea that the government felt like they finally needed to address it, because I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse. And with K-pop being such a big thing,
I was gonna say that,
and idols being such a big thing, stalking, I'm sure, is just through the roof. Okay.
And I should also note, for any of those who are out there who are unfamiliar with the country of Korea, when we say the word Korea, we mean South Korea, in case you were confused.
Yeah. We're definitely not talking about North Korea. I've watched multiple Korean dramas where women go to police, but stalkers just get released, and attackers just get released. There's nothing they can do about it. because it's just how things were back then. It was the first law in Korea to target stalking in particular. Prior to this, you would report a stalking incident, but they couldn't do anything about it. It would be a misdemeanor. It would cost a fine of approximately $85.
Wow.
$85. Okay. And this is people that like know everything about you and know how your commute. They know all this stuff about you. They can pay $85 and keep doing it. That's how fucked up that is. With this new law, any acts of following, blocking an unwilling individual, observing someone around their work, residence, school, etc., sending unwelcome messages, photos, things like that, causing fear through destruction of property kind of things. If you do any of those things, that's considered acts of stalking. And if you're caught, perpetrators could be punished with up to 3 years in prison.
Wow.
Or approximately up to $25,500 in
There shouldn't be a
US.
number assigned to it. I mean, that's something that is very clear. If you're rich, you're just allowed to get away with shit. If there's a fine on it in place of, instead of in addition to.
But $25,000 for stalking.
Yeah, but if you're rich, who the fuck cares? You know, you can just pay off any fine for any crime you commit at that point.
Yeah. If you add a weapon into the mix, it's bumped up to 5 years and then approximately $38,000 US dollars in fines. So, I mean, it's more than before where it was $85.
It's significantly better,
okay.
Yeah, but there's still room for improvement.
Now, police can provide protection shelters for victims. During investigations, they can issue restraining orders that ban potential suspects from coming within 100 meters of a victim or like prohibiting any online contact. Supposedly, their goal is to control acts of stalking at an early stage before it evolves into more. I don't know how effective that will be, but hopefully it's helped since the law got put into place with all these stalking problems. As for this particular case, though, it's obviously more than just an act of stalking. A press conference was held on April 9th, 2021 at 10 a.m. at the Nowon police station, and authorities had officially announced that it was a stalking crime. While being detained, when asked by prosecutors if he admitted to the stalking charges, he replied with, "I'm sorry."
Wow.
He claimed his actions were out of love, which is fucking dumb. He was supposedly, he claimed that it was an accident and an impulsive crime, but
no,
it's
it
not.
It was fuck not.
At the press conference, Tae-Hyun knelt in front of the cameras and bowed in front of everyone, and he took his mask off and revealed his face for everyone to see. His identity and personal information were disclosed to the public because of how serious the crime is. Because usually with laws in Korea, they will keep the identities of people a secret or you know, they'll keep it private unless it's become so big of a deal and so public that they feel like they need to release that information, or they have a right to release that information because the person is an absolute monster. And I think I've covered that in a previous topic.
Yeah,
before.
I do remember that.
He was sentenced to life imprisonment after he was convicted of the murder. He was convicted of murder, theft, harassment, breaking and entering, and misusing communications networks. I don't know. That's probably the blocking on her phone and the deleting of stuff. I'm not sure, but that's part of what he was convicted of. And he had prepared a knife in advance. So it's not, you know, impulsive. It's preemptive murder.
It's premeditated,
yeah,
for
premeditated.
Sure.
He even stole it as not to have a record of a purchase. He had been planning for at least a week. He searched online for killing methods and did what he could to find out everything about the victims. He even searched things like emergency places to hide.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the court did deny the prosecution's request for the death penalty, as according to the court, he had acknowledged his crimes, stating he deeply regretted them, and that because he had no history of criminal activity, they were like, well, you know, first offense kind of thing, which is bullshit. But
first offense, horrific.
Yeah.
Unforgivable. Life in prison, but disqualifies you from the death penalty.
Yeah, there are those, I being one of them, that believe his apology and seeming guilt was just a strategy for a lighter sentence.
Right.
A lighter penalty, which I wholeheartedly believe that.
He was clearly already thinking about how he could get away with it.
Yes.
When he was like stabbing himself in ways that he wasn't going to kill himself.
Yeah, the court insisted that he would remain in permanent isolation to repent for the rest of his life. So that's all I know. I tried to look and see where he's at right now. It's only been 2 years.
Right.
So I have no idea, but hopefully he rots in hell.
Seriously, that's horrific, man. Yeah, the stalker ones definitely trigger me a bit more lately. So
I just can't stand that the government couldn't do anything.
Yeah. It's very sad when someone feels like they have no recourse, like there's no way that they could ask for help. And even if they did, at that point in time, it would have been like a small fine, less than an Amazon Prime membership, and then he's back on the
Bro,
streets
an Amazon
doing it
Prime
more.
membership is like $100-something.
Exactly.
So what I would like to point out is he was not convicted of stalking in all of this. His stalking part was a misdemeanor. So that was nothing. It came down to the murder aspect of it. And the fact that he stayed in their house, he stole the knife, stuff like that. But the stalking that led up to this point was considered a misdemeanor.
It's such a hard thing to try and act like is just a small part of the crime. Because like I watched this content creator on TikTok and YouTube called Call Me Chris. And she is hilarious. She's hysterical in everything I've seen her in. You've probably seen her. I guarantee you.
I'm pretty sure you brought her up on the podcast before.
I guarantee you've seen her in something before and you'd recognize her. If not, you'd be a fan of her. But yeah, she had a blog recently, or a vlog.
Didn't she move? She had to move.
She moved. She like had an entire series where she was like, she bought her forever home. It was her dream house. I think she had it built, in fact. And then she was like going through making sure like everything was exactly how she wanted each room. And because like some of the stuff had been shot outside, multiple dudes had decided like she was in love with them and it was their challenge to come find her, and they found where she lived and were harassing her pretty intensely. The authorities had to get involved. She sold the house. She moved. She didn't talk about it until like she was finally out of there, and she's like recording all her stuff from places that no one will ever be able to see where she lives now.
Wow.
And it's like, what the fuck, people? Like, why is it so hard to not be absolute creeps? And if those measures aren't taken of her relocating her life somewhere else, it could possibly cost her her life. And that's the sort of thing where it's just completely out of hand, you know, and it's very, very scary. So, very triggered by the stalker ones lately. So it's a very well-researched topic, though. Good job, Robin.
Thanks.
All right, before we move into my topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break. So we'll see you on the flip side. And we're back. So, this week, after the wonderfully fun time I had doing Son of Sam and Sons of Sam, and then taking some heat for it, I decided I'd do something super chill and totally not controversial. And I immediately began looking into the Catholic Church because nothing controversial has ever come from them. Obviously a joke. I didn't pick my topic. The patrons did, as Robin mentioned earlier. So shout out to our patrons. You guys are amazing. And this is the thing. When we do a pick our topic poll on Patreon, we usually take 3 or 4 topics that we are comfortable covering, and we put them up there each. So I tell her, like, put this one, or this one. And then she puts 3 of hers, like from her side, because like our Google Doc has 2 columns, one that I've like looked up that I want to cover, and one that she's put in there herself. And so we take from our columns. Sometimes it happens where 2 of our topics gets picked, and one of them has to be covered by the other person. That did not happen this time. The true crime one was one that she had put up, and then Knights Templar was one that I had put up. So it worked out. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for that. And Knights Templar was the number 1 topic picked. So I was just like, people are into this. They want to hear about it. I'm excited. So with that in mind, here we go. Knights Templar.
Tell me about them knights.
First and foremost, I just want to say up front that when we do a topic, it's not us telling you about all the things we believe or have discovered ourselves.
Yes.
Robin didn't investigate that true crime she told you about earlier. She's telling you about things that she's found while doing research. If you want to dispute those things, don't fucking at us.
Just take it
just
up
putting
with
that out
sources.
There. Yeah, go ahead and contact the sources. I had a couple people reach out to me about disputing the facts from a case from the 1970s, and witness accounts and telling me those witnesses were straight up liars. I'm like, okay, cool. Get out a fucking Ouija board and talk to them then, because I don't know why you're talking to me about it. Like, coming at me like somehow me telling you what someone else said makes it where I have to defend what they said. Like, come on. Like, put 2 and 2 together here. Like, I don't need you guys reaching out to me. If you want to say like, oh, I heard that this isn't true. Like, that's different from you accusing me of it.
We're not going to those places and talking to those people. These are things we're getting from a bunch of different sources and trying to compile and make it palatable for you guys.
Yes.
It's not that we know absolutely everything. We don't know the facts.
We are not investigative journalists.
No.
We are students in high school giving you book reports.
Yes.
That's what this is. We've said it a million times before. I feel like I need to reiterate it again. So that's first. Second, and also foremost, if you have topics that you don't want to hear about, feel free to go to a different topic. Like Robin said earlier, if this isn't your thing, if you don't want to hear about stalking and murder, go ahead and jump off to a different topic, different part of the episode, different episode. I personally give 0 fucks if a specific piece of information doesn't align with your personal politics or your prejudices or any other reason why learning is going to offend you. Getting reached out to because I covered something that was very specific and necessary for a topic that I took very seriously because you don't like the place I covered, or you don't like the thing that is represented by the people. I don't fucking care. We've been doing this podcast for 6 years, okay? If me talking about something in a completely neutral way to cover a specific topic and that detail is absolutely essential to being covered, I'm going to cover it. And if it upsets you because that's not a place you like or those aren't people you like, don't listen to our show. I'm dead fucking serious about it. Like, I could give a shit if that hurts your feelings, but if you get upset because I'm trying to explain things in an objective, clear manner, I don't know what kind of content you're looking for, but there's plenty of turd nugget podcasts out there who I'm sure will do it in a subjective manner. They're just reading a fucking Wikipedia page, and that's not us. So feel free to relocate to them.
Tell me how you really feel.
Lastly,
Jesus.
and still foremost as fuck, until I get to the part where I say, so what do I think? Which I do in most of my topics. It's not my personal opinion that I'm sharing with you. It's just the research that I found. I'm telling you what is thought or possibly known, depending if I'm covering like a scientific fact. If I tell you we're getting into conspiracy theory territory, that means this, might be bullshit. It doesn't mean here come the facts, people. We're entering the truth zone.
I mean, a lot of our topics have dates that are not exact, that are
and
not
we mentioned,
accurate.
I found 2 different sources that have 2 different dates or 2 different numbers, and we put that out there. And I mean, one of the most consistent catchphrases I have is the caveat of this could all be bullshit.
It's the nature of the internet.
Exactly. I want to make sure I'm very clear on this because I did take some heat for Sons of Sam, and I've addressed that at this point. I had an outpouring of support, and a lot of people reached out to me to tell me, like, you did a really good job on that. And I was so overwhelmed. I knew bad stuff was going to come with it. And to be clear, I got 2 things. They're both pretty annoying. So I was like, I usually ignore bad feedback. We don't even read reviews nowadays.
I don't read reviews because
most of them are just like easy pot shots they're taking at me or Robin. They clearly haven't paid any fucking attention to our show. They don't even know who we are. So it's not constructive feedback in any way. And we have so many folks we know who listen to the show who can provide productive or constructive feedback that I'd be more than happy to talk to one of them if there's something that I'm curious if it like landed well or if we could have done it differently or done it better. So yeah, I just want to put that out there because I don't like to cover conspiracy theories, and that's exactly why. Son of Sam was pretty direct. Sons of Sam was definitely different, and I knew that we were going to get into it a little bit, so I was kind of anticipating that. Now I'm going to cover Knights Templar, and Knights Templar can get into the weeds a little bit because it's very, very religious. So if you're a very religious person, you're very easily offended when anyone talks about your religion or a different religion that you don't like, maybe this isn't the topic for you. You might want to jump to a different one. This is a very historical topic. So if learning ain't your thing, you may not like this. My goal with this topic is to say, who are the Knights Templar? When did they show up? How did they get so powerful? What happened to them? Where did they go? Are they still around? That's what I'm doing here, okay? I'm sifting the myth and bullshit from historical accounts as best as I can. And if that interests you, and you're also interested in things getting a little bit weird, and mystical artifact rumors and religious massacres and political pressure, if that sounds fun, strap on, because that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm covering, because guess what, guys? That's the Knights Templar. That's exactly how it comes down to. I had a friend who voted in this poll. He has supported us from day one. I play D&D with him every Sunday, if we can. If not, it's like every other Sunday. And I got into D&D this weekend, and I thanked him. I said, like, thank you so much for voting in the poll, because he was one of the first people to vote, and he voted for Knights Templar. He is an incredibly skeptical person. He is very, like, logical, objective, like, science, detail-oriented person, and he voted for Knights Templar. And I was like, I thought it was interesting you voted for Knights Templar and not True Crime. He's like, yeah, Knights Templar is cool, man. When you start getting into, like, Freemasons, like, that shit's fucking crazy. And, like, hearing it come from him, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, this sounds like I have a really interesting topic on my hands. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you up front. I'm not going to leave you guys in a cliffhanger like I did last time. There's a whole lot to this topic. The rabbit hole goes deep. So what we're going to cover specifically in this episode is Knights Templar, like the history of Knights Templar and how it leads up to a specific point where it's going to go in two directions. One of those directions is the Freemasons. The Freemasons is almost as deep. I think it's actually deeper, to be honest with you. And that is going to require another topic. I'm going to do it in a like sequential order. So when I'm done talking about Knights Templar, it will lead directly into the Freemasons topic, which will be next week. So the Patreon folks got kind of a 2-for-1 on this one. So just letting you know up front, like not exactly a cliffhanger, but it's going to be a to be continued at the end of this one. So cool. This is Infinity War. Endgame will be next week. So, all right. Now that you know all that, all my caveats up front, who knows? This could all be bullshit. All the history books could be lying to us. We don't know. You know, what we know is what we're told. And I'm about to tell you some stuff, so let's just go with it. So, add in that caveat. So the existence of the Knights Templar, the history part of it, fairly reliable. You know, outside of history, there is tons and tons and tons of wild speculation about the Knights Templar, who they are, who they came to be. It really kind of depends on how you're familiar with the Knights Templar through popular media normally.
Is that guy in Indiana Jones and the one with the
He is a different order, but I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be parts of the Knights Templar.
Okay.
The guy who's like ancient, who tells them like, you chose holy. He's like one of 3 brothers, but I think they're all specifically Knights of the Priory, but I can't remember because I get stuff mixed up with Da Vinci Code. That said, like, if you've heard of Knights Templar, I feel like the 2 things people have heard of them from nowadays are Da Vinci Code, where they're the good guys, they're the protector of the Holy Grail, or Assassin's Creed, where they're the bad guys. They're the ones trying to kill the assassins because the Knights Templar are the ones who know the history of the human race and are trying to prevent the assassins from learning it and exposing it to humanity.
I've never played Assassin's Creed.
It's fucking wild.
I know some guy goes into the souls of his ancestors or something
it's
like that.
His DNA. The whole concept with Assassin's Creed, spoiler alert for a game that's like 20 fucking years old, is that, you know, the reason animals like can have migratory patterns, like they're born, they know exactly where to go and travel thousands of miles in the exact same route as their predecessors, is because your DNA carries memory. And it's like latent and suppressed, and they develop a machine that can access those memories. And that's what the original Assassin's Creed is. It's some guy who got kidnapped, who's being forced to relive the memories of his ancestors so they can find where something is hidden.
So you're living through the memories.
You're living through the memories. That's what the game is. And in between missions, you come out and you're trapped in this lab and you can do exploring and read emails. And like, as you read the emails, you realize this fucking company called Abstergo is present day Knights Templar. They just shifted into a different form. They're not military anymore. They've taken on the form of like a corporation or like a borderless nation, essentially. That's what Assassin's Creed is. That's what 1 is, 2, 3, Revelations, Brotherhood, all that shit. They all follow that storyline. It gets a little bit crazy after that. But yeah, Knights Templar are bad guys in that. So obviously we're not going to get into that shit because that's a video game. It's a work of fiction.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start at the beginning. I want to take us back because what we're going to do is cover who they were, when they came to be, height of their power, why people think they had that power, because that is important. And that's the speculatory, like conspiracy theory part. The Order 66 shit that happened.
If you guys have never heard of Order 66, please watch Star Wars.
I'm going to spoil that. That's pretty old too.
Yeah,
it's episode 3. Like, that's the Emperor giving the clone troopers the order to exterminate the Jedi.
Yep.
That's what Order 66 was. And then where the stragglers went afterwards, and maybe where they could still be to this day. And, you know, that's also very interesting. So this topic isn't necessarily scary, but it is interesting for sure. And religious massacres can be fucking scary for sure, and secret organizations and all that stuff. So strap in. I think you're going to enjoy this. Side note, if the Knights Templar do exist and they're out there today, like, please don't at me if I got some of this wrong. I'm doing my best with what I got to work. Unless you're going to, like, make me a member, then I'm like, cool. Hit me up.
If any of you Knights Templar / what are the Freemasons or whatever, right? If you guys have a Club 33 membership and want to invite us, that'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be super dope.
That'd be super dope.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Club 33. Okay, let's start at the beginning. I have mentioned some of the origin before in my Holy Grail episode because the Knights Templar are very involved with that legend. And there's part of the speculation that, at some point Knights Templar obtained or located the Holy Grail, blah, 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 blah. We're going to get to that. So if it sounds familiar-ish, that's why you've heard it before when I covered the Holy Grail. But we're going to start at 1099 because there's this place called Jerusalem.
Ah, yes.
It's kind of, I wouldn't say controversial. It's hotly contested is the best way to put it. And it has been for a long time.
Some people believe it is the Holy Land and some people don't.
This is the thing. Multiple religions do believe it's the Holy Land for various different reasons. And they decide that the way that they want to honor their Holy Land is by covering it in other people's blood because they basically want to control it. And so if one group controls it, the other group attacks to take it back and forth it goes. It's like that territory that no one can seem to settle and fucking risk. And because of that, the game goes on forever. So Christian armies are able to capture Jerusalem from the Muslim army in 1099. And that's why our story starts right there. Because when Jerusalem's under Christian control, a bunch of Christian pilgrims are like, hey, let's go check it out. Tourist destination. We can finally go. Oh my God, I've always wanted to go. So they set out on a pilgrimage to go there. And a bunch of them do this. And on the way, they start getting robbed and murdered.
All right.
Which is known to be, at this point in time, a dick move. And this shit goes on for years. So wealthy Christians of means with lots of money, they go on their pilgrimages and they take along soldiers to protect them along their way because they don't want to get robbed or killed. But the poor folks, they're just sort of shit out of luck. Got to roll the dice on making it there safely. But some knights, and at this point, they're not really officially knights. They just have the armor and swords, or just like makeshift armor and makeshift swords. They decide they're going to strap on that shit and, shine up their best weapon and escort those of lower means to the Holy Land because they think poor people should have access to God too.
Do they become Knights Templar?
They do.
By
1118, so 19 years after Jerusalem has been taken by the Christians, a French knight named, I'm going to say it wrong, and I'm going to say it slightly less wrong. I'm going to try and do this, right? Hugues de Payens. That's the name of the French knight. And in French, it's pronounced Hugues de Payens. And I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, but I tried my best. I listened for like 10 minutes to this pronunciation with my headphones on to try and get it right.
Okay.
This dude decides he's going to form an official military order. I'm going to call him Hugh from now on. And he asks all of his friends and family members, like, hey guys, like, do you want to be part of my super cool club? And 8 of them say, fuck yeah, let's do it. Do you got a name for this cool group? And Hugh says, sure do. We're going to be called the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon.
They should have just been called the First Order.
They're like, oof, that is a fucking mouthful, but we're still in. And I'm pretty sure I made this exact joke in the Holy Grail episode. So either way, that is their official name when they start. Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. And these guys go on to start escorting people, especially the poor folk who can't afford it, to Jerusalem to make sure they make it there okay. And more of them start to show up. It's not just these 9 guys forever. And pretty quickly, the ruler of Jerusalem finds out what's going on, hears about it. This guy's named Baldwin II. And he likes them. He likes the thing that they're doing. And he says, hey, you guys should put your HQ here. You should build your long name club temporary headquarters in Jerusalem. So they did. They built it on the Temple Mount, which, if you remember from a bunch of different topics I've covered on Artifacts, it's a very important place to not just Christianity, but other religions as well. In exchange for them being granted this land to build on, they pledged to protect Christian visitors to Jerusalem in perpetuity forever. And by way of doing that, they're also going to protect Jerusalem from invaders. So they've kind of secured themselves new knights to protect the Holy Land.
All right.
Fast forward 10 years to 1129, and the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon get a formal endorsement by the Catholic Church.
So now they're baller.
This is like going from an unofficial podcast about a TV show to the official podcast about that TV show. Like,
okay.
You guys are official. You're part of the church. You're doing the Lord's work. And they basically put out a pamphlet, and it's called In Praise of the New Knighthood, hyping them up, making it official, letting everyone know. And it's at this point now they're being called Knights Templar. At some point, the name gets shortened and switched, and that's what they're called.
They have
Knights
a really
Templar.
good street team.
So yeah, they get a PR guy in there, and they're like, I have an idea, guys. You're going to like this. Just call a shield. So...
Oh my God.
Fast forward 10 more years. It's 1139, and Pope Innocent II, which is just a super suspicious name, if you ask me. I don't know who would name
I'm sure he
themselves
wasn't innocent at all.
He issues this thing called a papal bull, which sounds weird, but it's like a decree. It's like an official decree, and in this decree, he grants the Knights Templar special rights. If you're wondering what those are, well, they would be exempt to all taxes. Like, anywhere they went, they're exempt to taxes, not just in Jerusalem or in, any other region controlled by the church. They're basically stating they don't owe taxes to anyone ever. They can build their own places of worship wherever they want, and we're held to no authority on earth except that of the Pope himself.
Wow.
They have no boss.
That's too much power.
That's just the Pope. That's all they got. And they actually started getting paid by the church in like the early 30s, mid 30s. They start like getting donations from the church. Basically, they're being paid to expand and become a military arm of the Catholic Church.
Did you know that the Vatican City is the smallest country in the world?
Yeah, because it's independent of like
Isn't
everything
that
else around it.
freaking crazy?
It is. They're not 9 people in this now timeline that I'm talking about. At its peak, the Knights Templar had between 15,000 and 20 members.
Wow.
That's a fuck ton of people that have, no rules. They're not paying any taxes. They're cruising around doing whatever they wanted, basically. And this is, a small cities or a large city in some cases worth of people that can basically do whatever they want. So why did they gain that much power? Let's pause there and talk about that for a minute. That is a big subject in the conspiracy theories and popular culture about the Knights Templar. They basically became as powerful as the Pope after this decree was issued.
Which he did not like.
And, this is the thing. It depends on which historians you subscribe to on this, because some of them state that he gave them this power because he wanted to keep these other groups in Catholicism in check, so to speak, and he believed that they would do that. Other folks think that he was blackmailed into doing it, and other folks think that this sort of was just bestowed upon them because of artifacts that they located during the time that they spent in the Holy Land.
Okay.
They built their headquarters on Temple Mount, and Temple Mount is said to have within it somewhere multiple artifacts. And because of that, that's where a lot of the conspiracy theories come from. It's said that the most popular version of this is that the Knights Templar located the Holy Grail. That it was something that was hidden, that was there when the Muslims had control of Jerusalem.
Okay.
When they fled, they hid it somewhere in Temple Mount so that when they came back and conquered again, they could find it. And the Knights Templar were the group that found it. And once they found it, they made the church aware, and they basically said, like, hey, we're going to protect this thing from now on, which is basically like saying finders keepers. We just want to let you know that we found it. And the church was like, we'll give you all the rights and titles that you guys want to do whatever you want, but make sure you keep that thing safe, and it lets these other groups know, like, these guys are the ones that are in charge. Like, you might be on the same level as them, so to speak, but no one fucks with them. Like, these are made guys. That's the most popular theory. There are other theories about what they found that all kind of fall within the same category. A lot of theories state it wasn't just the Holy Grail, that it was either the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. Some folks state that they found a bunch of different pieces or the remaining piece of the cross that Jesus Christ was actually crucified on. Others say that it was the Turin Shroud, which is another, artifact. I think it was the thing that they draped over Christ, like between the time that he was killed and the time that he rose.
I don't know a lot about all this stuff.
So a lot of Christian artifacts that are of incredible importance to the church and to Christianity itself. But either way, this specific theory states that the reason that the Knights Templar rose to power is because they located a lost artifact that was hidden within the city and basically said, we're going to hang on to this and look after it. And the church was like, okay, you do that. We'll give you the power that you want, but you better take care of that thing, So that's obviously something that we can never truly know what happened unless like a Knights Templar somehow portaled here and was like, oh yeah, I totally found the Holy Grail. And even then I could call bullshit on him. He could be an official time traveler, 100% confirmed. He could still be a fucking liar. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I just imagine if there is someone out there who did find a philosopher's stone, a sorcerer's stone, a holy grail. They are just going to live forever like freaking Wonder Woman.
I mean, why'd you pick Wonder Woman?
I don't know.
That's so weird.
Because she is from the olden days, and then she's in a museum in modern times.
Okay.
I imagine whoever found the Holy Grail is like that.
And, assuming someone found it and that it is real.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. That's all to say at this point in time, because it makes no sense. There's so many other superheroes that live forever. Like Ra's al Ghul has the Lazarus pit he dips himself in so he can come back to life and live forever. I feel like that would connect a little bit more to what I'm covering. But
yeah, you're right.
Anyways, we're at this point, 1939. They're officially the most powerful group basically in the world, and all of Christianity for sure. And the church, it's not like they just go on and do whatever they want. They're not up to their own devices. The church is using them straight up as a military arm. They're the tip of the spear in crusade battles. They're using them during crusade warfare. And they do pretty well. They're getting pretty well known to be some of the fiercest soldiers out there. There's a battle in 1177 called the Battle of Montgassard. And it's pretty famous to be their most impressive victory. So 500 Templar knights show up. There's a few thousand infantry who are close to being defeated by an opposing army of around 30,000 troops. So these guys,
that's a lot.
These 500 Templar knights show up. Everyone gets inspired by it because they're like, these are the fucking best of the best. These are these dudes riding in. They're going to help us turn the tide of the battle. They won that fucking battle.
That's insane.
These Knights Templar show up and they win this battle because of it. And it's a very famous battle. But at the same time, they're kind of assholes. Who would have thought nearly limitless power and fame would have that sort of effect? So there are two other groups of knights, official knights at the time within the Catholic Church that are notable that I want to bring up. There's more than one, or there's more than two, but these are the ones I want to bring up. One is the Knights Hospitalaire, which I think is how you say that. And the other is the Teutonic Knights. Teutonic, I'm not sure how to say that. The Knights Templar don't really play well with other groups. So the Knights Hospitalaire are kind of a solid rival as far as size and strength and influence. I don't think they have the unlimited free pass like the Knights Templar do. The Teutonic Knights not so much, but they're still fairly well known within Catholicism. But these three groups don't fucking like each other.
Is it because they all just represent something a little different?
A little different, so they hate each other. Someone else is getting credit. We don't like them. We don't like how they practice. I don't like anything about them. I don't like how their face looks. Their armor's stupid. I don't like their fucking logo.
It's the different types of Catholicism. It's all Catholicism. It's
not even that. These guys probably don't even like the fact that they're from different parts of the country, but they're all worshiping the exact same. And I shouldn't say the country. They're probably just from different countries in general. But because these guys don't like each other, it's not 2 versus 1, they both don't like Knights Templar. It's a triangle of hate. They all hate each other. And it's not the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They're all just fucking enemies here. So they bicker, and there's a bunch of infighting for years. And it's right around the time Saladin shows up and starts uniting the Muslim armies. And he's like, hey guys, you know what sounds cool? Let's go back to Jerusalem and let's take that shit back. And at this point, they all just sort of align under him. They're like, okay, cool. And, he starts his holy war. And sure enough, by 1187, 10 years after that super famous victory the Knights Templar had, Saladin does just that. 1187, Jerusalem falls back to the Muslim army. So it's just shifted back. Just under 100 years, it goes back. Christians aren't happy. Lots of blame is laid.
Always.
Knights Templar are involved in a lot of the successful battles. But the point being here that you can win a battle and lose the war, and Jerusalem's the thing you're trying to keep, and if it's lost, then they consider that a failure. So they're pretty pissed about it.
Okay.
So their reputation starts to suffer. They don't lose a whole lot of members because people are still very attracted to unlimited amounts of power. But at the same time, they're not the Knights Templar that people thought they were. They're not indestructible. They're not undefeatable.
Okay.
They've been defeated. They've been kicked out of the Holy Land at this point. 1229 rolls around. So we're jumping forward 42 years. It's a pretty big time jump. The reason I say it is because another crusade happens. This time it's the 6th crusade. And the Christians take Jerusalem back. So it switches back again. This time, though, the guy that took it refused to bring a single Knights Templar with him.
What?
He was trying to show, 1, that they could take Jerusalem without the Knights Templar, and 2, that the Knights Templar were overrated, and they weren't worth the trouble, because they would cause dissension in the ranks, and he takes the Holy Land. A side note, they only wind up holding it for 15 years before they lose it again. I think they lost it in like 1243, 1244, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And the site that I was reading like said the West, and I was like, West is a weird way to put it. But the West doesn't wind up regaining Jerusalem until 1917 during World War One. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, that's fucking weird, but whatever. So the 1200s in general, like, are not great for the Knights Templar. Like 1229 obviously showed like people didn't want to include them in their army anymore. They weren't allowed to play, and like military wise, things start getting worse. So I'm gonna give you a basic summary of what happens because I don't want this to just be a huge history lesson. So what winds up happening is that they have a bunch of headquarters, right? When they lose Jerusalem, they lose their main headquarters. So they have to figure out a different place to go. Within the Holy Land, they have headquarters in Acre. I'm not sure how you say that. It depends on where you're from, I guess. Tortosa, Atlit, and Arwad. Those are 4 other cities within the Holy Land where they have like big bases that can become their headquarters. And one by one, those start getting taken as well. Each time it's taken, they shift their headquarters to a different place. But by the start of the 1300s, all of their bases, all their headquarters there in the Holy Land have been retaken by a different army.
That's fucked up.
Not necessarily the same one each time, but they have no foothold whatsoever to speak of in a military fashion in the Holy Land anymore. But here's the thing, and this is one of the things I didn't really know well about the Knights Templar until I started doing this research. They weren't just there in the Holy Land for the Crusades. Like, because they were allowed to build their temples or churches or basically whatever the fuck they wanted wherever they went, they had property and land all across Europe. And they had money because they never had to pay taxes. So, like, they have just spots all over the place in all these different countries where they could just do normal business, you know? Because they're basically out of the fight at this point, like, they're still an integral part of daily life for Christianity, and none of them have to worry about, like, being in the crusade anymore. They're just back in all these different locations, and it's, like, all over. It's all over Europe where these things are at.
Why wouldn't you, you know? If you have that much money, that much power, like...
They could just go and do whatever they want, didn't have to worry about fighting anymore. And they're like this consistent, constant presence, these members of these communities, and, like, they own... you know, other stuff in the community that's not just the stuff they built for Knights Templar specifically. Like, they own farms and vineyards and inns and different buildings all over. And people know, like, oh, that's a Templar farm. You know, oh, that's a Templar vineyard. Like, it's all connected. They have made a Templar network through all of Europe that has nothing to do with their fighting force. It's not just religious.
So is there a Templar wine?
There probably still is. It would not shock me to find out that there's a vineyard that exists that was there that was founded by a Knights Templar.
I would love to drink some.
Sure, you just want to drink wine.
I want to drink that Kool-Aid.
So at this point, the Knights Templar are thinking, we should pick an official place to just set up shop and make it ours. Not like a forward base in the Holy Land, but like, we need our own city that everyone knows, sort of like the fucking Vatican. And they're thinking this because the Teutonic Knights, they had already done that in 2 separate locations by the 1300s. They had cities that were theirs.
How big?
Pretty fucking big. Thousands of people. The Knights Hospitalier, however you say it, they were in the process of doing that and did complete their city in what is currently present-day Greece.
Wow.
So the Knights Templar are like, we need our own fucking city too. We got all this money. The countries that they traveled in freely, those countries were not excited about that. A massive town that would become the seat of power for the Knights Templar, where they had all this power and all this wealth within the borders of some country whose authority they didn't fucking recognize. It didn't sit well with any of the countries or any of the nobles, because they certainly don't like to share, specifically land and definitely not power. But the Templars have this standing army that's no longer fighting in the Holy Wars, and they have a shit ton of money. So they can sell their services and they can give loans to countries, like not just a few people. Like, they're giving money to like the fucking King of France.
What?
To wage a war with England. And they're just fronting him all this money. And like, from what I've read, soldiers as well. His name is King Philip IV. And he racks up so much debt with them in his losing effort. He's like, hey guys, can you give me more money? And they basically tell him, like, we want our money back. Like, I don't think you're good for this anymore, man. Like, we're not going to give you any more money.
Ooh.
We need you to start paying back these loans. This is not a joke. Like, this is 100% what happened. And at that time, there's this new pope. His name is Clement V. And he says, I have an awesome idea. Let's merge the Knights Templar with the Knights Hospitalier. And he sends out letters to both the leaders. To which both organizations reply like, I'd rather gargle broken glass than merge with those fugly ass skanks, end quote. Obviously not an actual quote, but they are refusing to merge with one another. Like, they're so offended by this request, they're not going to do it. And this is the Pope asking, suggesting that they merge. They both state, no, that's not going to happen.
Can you say no to the Pope
They
about
did.
that?
So these two things happen at around the same time. King Philip has been cut off from these loans, and the Pope is suggesting that these two organizations merge, and they both say no. All of this is sort of a perfect confluence of events, and King Philip realizes, I can take advantage of this. So he reaches out to the Pope and he says, fuck the Knights Templar. Those guys are assholes. They called you fat. They said your hat is stupid. And the Pope goes, yeah, fuck those guys. What really happens here is they both acknowledge the fact that the Knights Templar are incredibly powerful. They have had this power for far too long. It was given them by a Pope that they don't agree with anymore. More importantly, King Philip doesn't want to pay back that fucking money. So he convinces Pope Clement and a bunch of other people apparently too that were working in secret, you guys got to get rid of the Knights Templar. They're too powerful. They are starting to become the voice of the Catholic Church because they are present in all these different countries. And now that they're talking about forming their own city, it's almost like they're forming their own separate church. And there's not going to be a need for the leaders of that country. And there's not going to be a need for the Pope, is essentially what the leaders of the countries and the Pope start thinking. So Friday the 13th, 1307, it's the real date, all French Templars for sure are arrested or killed.
Is this why Friday the 13th is unlucky?
Well, this is another one of the reasons. I don't think it's the origin of Friday the 13th. I think the number 13 has always had, like, I've covered this before on a different topic.
Yeah.
Always had nastiness associated with it, but Friday the 13th didn't help out. This is where Friday the 13th came from, but this is not where the 13th being unlucky came from. Pretty sure, not 100%. But it's the Order 66.
Yeah.
In real history. This is where, like, every military member in France that's not a Knights Templar is tasked with going to Templar home, Templar businesses, with a warrant that literally states, translated to English, God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom, end quote.
And
they have a piece of paper that says that, and they're like, you're going to be in prison forever, or you can get killed. Make up your fucking mind, but this is happening right now.
So now they're saying the Knights Templar are an enemy of
evil.
the faith.
They're an enemy of the church, and everyone's just like, some people are like, yeah, sure, fuck those guys. Some people are like, what the fuck is going on? So they start making shit up. And some of the things that are being said at this point now is that the Knights Templar hate Jesus, they hate the church, they hate the countries. They state that if you're doing a Knights Templar initiation, they force you to, like, spit on the cross.
What?
Deny Christ. Kiss ladies you're not married to.
Okay, and they have no proof of any of this.
None of it. A bunch of them are accused of being gay, because that was enough back in the day to just say, like, oh my God, I guess it's okay that you're doing this to them then. And, like, there was no, like, drinking of blood or praying to a weird altar. They didn't have, like, weird sacrifices or rituals or things like that. They had symbolism, and they had, like, oaths that they would swear. They didn't have, like, this stuff. So here's the thing, though. Here's where I'm going to separate a bit of myth and legend from fact. Everyone says in popular culture, Friday the 13th, 1307, all the Knights Templar are wiped out. France, 100% they wanted them gone. There's a bunch of other countries that decide they're going to follow suit on this, but it's not like complete wiped off the... But it's not like they're completely wiped off the map, you know?
Yeah.
France for sure was probably the worst of it. That said, like, after this is done, the Knights Templar still exist. They still exist within the church. Like, it's still an officially recognized section of the church until March 22nd, 1312.
Oh, okay.
That is 5 years later. The Knights Templar are still there. And in 1312, the church finally says, like, you guys aren't official anymore, and disbands the Knights Templar. It's not like this happened and then they were gone, they were erased from existence. Like, no, this happened and then most of those guys went away. Some of them still reported back to the church, like, what can we do? What do we do wrong? Do we need to repent? What's going on? Some of them just immediately absorbed into the countryside. Some of them fled and went underground and waited for a place to, like, go pledge their allegiance to, basically. But it's not like they just fucking vanished. The thing that is crazy, though, these dudes had a fuck ton of money. And they own land and property everywhere and businesses. In most cases, the reasons that the governments were so amicable towards this plan is because they could take their money and their lands and their businesses and claim them for themselves. In a ton of cases, a bunch of those wound up going to the Knights Hospitalier. They just turned that shit directly over to them, like, okay, you guys are the new knights in charge. A lot of other cases, they just went to the government. And in some cases, they remain vacant because the Catholic Church was like, we're not sure what we're going to use them for, but keep them there because they belong to the church and not the Knights Templar anymore. So It has been discovered through documentation within the Vatican that was like supposed to be hidden, but was filed in the wrong spot. And someone who was like given access to go through the archives found something, and it was confirmed to be real that the Knights Templar, during that 5-year period between like the massacre and when they were disbanded, were absolved.
What?
They were forgiven for their offenses and said like, everything's okay now, but we're going to disband your order. So like, that's actually there. The church has since said that this was a mistake and it was wrong. And this specific pope was acting under the influence and the pressure of a bunch of the leaders of Europe and other different groups who really wanted the Knights Templar to go away.
Yeah.
Who had been wronged or crossed by them in some way, shape, or form. And they figured this was the easiest way, was just mass murder, and that they don't agree with it. And they officially recognized it as the wrong thing to do. So there's that. But all those places in the local community weren't just taken. They didn't disappear. And they weren't always really happy with what had happened. Like 12 full countries had major Templar presence within them when Order 66 happened. 12 countries.
Wow.
Just had Templar everywhere.
Do you have a list of those countries?
I do, but I'm not going to read it off.
Okay.
So lots of them absorb. It's basically all the countries in Europe that you could ever imagine.
Oh,
Spain,
okay.
Portugal, France, London. There's a couple of countries that were within
hitters.
France. Croatia, I think, was in there too, and a few other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head. But in a lot of cases that they just sort of stopped representing the Knights Templar, but stayed within those communities and stayed owning those businesses, you know? But they still wanted to practice their Templar ways. So after this happens, there's a lot of random stories about where the Templars went. And that's where the next phase of conspiracy theories goes, okay? It's like, where did they go? What did they do? Some of the more radical conspiracy theories with typically zero proof state that they went underground. They started plotting to take over the world and shit like that.
Okay.
There's like no proof of that whatsoever. In most cases, those people admit that it's like complete fiction that they wrote, that they were just trying to find some sort of documented evidence to back it up.
So what's the Denver airport one?
That's completely, has nothing to do with Knights Templar whatsoever.
No? Or Freemasons? No?
Nope. Neither one of them. It's just like weird murals that depict like the Nazi army that were eventually removed. Like, I could cover that in a different topic, but that has nothing to do with Knights Templar.
All right.
So, all this shit happens. People are like, the Knights Templar are still out there. 1319 rolls around, and there's this thing that started called the Order of Christ. So, the Order of Christ, also known as the Military Order of Christ, it's quite real. And this was formed 7 years after the Knights Templar were disbanded, and I think 12 years after the massacre happened. It was created by the King of Portugal, because the King of Portugal was not on board with the massacre. He thought it was over the top, he thought it was unnecessary, and he was absolutely not cool with the slaughter of all these people. And so when they get their absolution for their sins, this is why that part's important, because he literally makes this order and announces it like to the world to state like, I want the Knights Templar that are still out there to come to Portugal and join the Order of Christ, because I want you guys to have a place that you can go and practice still.
So they didn't have to hide anymore.
So they don't have to hide anymore. And Pope Clement at this point, the guy who orchestrated that shit, he's gone. And the king negotiates with the new pope and was not only given the Templar property and assets that have been vacated with Order 66 happened. He's like,
wow,
all that shit that we still have in our possession, we're going to give to you. It belongs to the Order of Christ now. Tell the Knights Templar they can come out of hiding, just be under this new banner and don't do Knight Templar shit. You guys aren't in charge of everything anymore. You can't get away with everything. But then after that, there's a literal official papal bull that comes out, another decree, stating that the Order of Christ is fucking legit and it's a part of the Catholic Church. So it's like 7 years after the disbanding of the Knights Templar, this new order shows up that's basically like, we're the new Knights Templar. That's basically what they are. They're like Knights Templar 2.0. And they're recognized by the Catholic Church. These guys are around until 1789, and a bunch of the Knights Templar, they actually flocked to it. They finally had the place they were looking for. The thing about this organization that has all these Knights Templar go to it is that it still exists to this day. They were set aside from the official Catholic Church in 1789 because they wanted to have like specific control over them back then. And they're like, no, we're going to keep doing things our way. So they put them aside as like, you're affiliated with us, but you're not recognized as like official Catholic Church.
Okay. They
shut down in 1910. They were officially disbanded in 1910 and reformed in 1917 with their new leader, the President of Portugal. So before they had Grand Masters, similar to how the Knights Templar did, now their leader, to this day, still is the President. The President
instead of a
controls the Order of Christ in Portugal.
Okay.
That's how it remains. which is fucking weird. It's weird because they grant you, like, you know how you can become a knight?
Yeah.
In UK, like, you do something super cool, you're a super famous pop star or whatever, they fucking knight you.
Yeah.
It's a similar ceremony, but you become the Order of Christ.
Okay.
So you, like, basically get to become, like, a Knights Templar if you've done enough military service. It's I think it's an award specifically given to people that have a military service. They have an entire hierarchy for how they control this and, like, who they report to. And it's kind of fucking crazy because this is still around. There's not a lot of things that they are into or influencing anymore, so it's not like they're still like this organization controlling stuff.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to go to Portugal and find out more about this. So, not a whole lot about them written out there aside from the fact that they're essentially where the Knights Templar migrated to in most cases. So I say in most cases because there is another place that the Knights Templar supposedly went once the order was shut down and once the massacres happened. And that one's less confirmed, but still kind of confirmed, and that would be the Freemasons. The Freemasons have been around since the 1200s, which is a long time ago, and they were there before the Knights Templar fell. They were there around the peak of the Knights Templar, in fact. And here's the thing. The Freemason story is fucking crazy. So the rabbit hole I went down, it was mostly historical for Knights Templar and a little bit of sifting out the myths and the legends and stuff like that. But as soon as I got to the Freemasons, I was like, holy shit. Now this is the crazy shit I thought I was getting into. It's just madness. It's like, if you've thought like Knights Templar, like you're getting into some crazy shit, you're probably actually thinking the Freemason myths. Because like they reach into like world politics on a global scale. Like
it's like they have members in all branches and
they're
stuff,
everywhere,
right?
man. And like they have involvement in all these different conspiracy theories. Like there's not a conspiracy theory out there that I feel like they don't touch on.
Are they like Hydra or something?
They're Illuminati. They're the New World Order. There's all this other shit too. And there have been political parties, actual political parties that have been created to destroy the Freemasons. Like political parties that showed up to get rid of something that people weren't sure was either like was like a myth or was it real. Like one of them happened in the United States of America. It lasted for like 12 years and then they disbanded.
Oh my god!
Legit. They showed up in the like mid to late or early to mid 1800s.
Save it for the next episode.
And then like the Nazi Party had an entire wing dedicated to hunting down the Freemasons in Germany and killing them all.
What?
It's fucking crazy, dude.
Well, I can't wait.
Yeah, there's so much to cover with Freemasons. I want to give you guys a little sneak preview because I'm going to have to cover them next week in a 2-part topic. So tune in next week for the Freemasons, which is the official sequel to this topic. But that is the Knights Templar. I know it wasn't as like mind-bendingly crazy, but I hope I did separate some of the myths and we covered the massacre at least as accurately as I could possibly do. So that is it for me.
Cool. Thank you. I enjoyed that.
Sure,
I'm excited for the next, I'm really excited for the weird, just like conspiracy crazy stuff.
Yeah, I'm hoping that people will enjoy next week's as well. And I'll start off next episode so that you can go from this episode to next episode and flow right into the next topic if you're listening to this back to back. So hopefully that'll be seamless aside from like the intro and all that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's everything we have for this episode 270. If you have a story you would like to share with us, doesn't necessarily have to be Freemason or Knights Templar related or true crime. It could be anything that's happened to you, like supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, true crime, coincidental, whatever the case may be. We would love to hear it. We would love to share it on the show. So feel free to email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, click on contact us, fill out that form. It does come directly to us, or hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers starting at $1. We're really excited to start putting out some vlogs up there. Adam's been putting out a bunch. But if you're not into the monthly subscription type thing, you can also go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast, and all your donations go to helping us keep the show going.
Indeed. Thank you so much for everyone who supports us, everyone who's entered the contest. You're all amazing. We appreciate you. That's everything. It's 2:30 a.m. We want to go to bed. Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.